Mexicans like soccer. Maybe I'd relate to you more this way. Forgot they also like bullfighting. Need to know 3 things I want to tell you. Number 1, I've been to Enrique's house. Number 2, I was not only in Max Goblin, the awful thing that was here, I won it. Number 3, because I live in LA, Enrique tricked me to go to some crazy Max Goblin version up in LA. And I apparently did so well, they called me back for the finals of that, which sadly I was too busy. Enrique is very nice, and one time, as Drew said, we went to Yosemite together. Drew was there for 2 or 3 days, but Nate, myself, Ryan Kuhn, Ryan White were there for 7 to 10-ish, let's call it. So there's some things that you need to know. I'm going to tell you the end of the story. Number 1, Enrique really helped prove a point. It was something that he did perfectly well. And number 2, he actually made it to the top of Half Dome. Half Dome was really difficult, as Drew said. Everyone on the line knew him as the animal. And when we were up there 35 minutes before him, we're like, is the animal coming? They're like, yeah, he's right down there, don't worry. And he smells, and we're like, sorry. He's allergic to soap. So that was great. He did really well, and then he lay in this pit right at the top while we all took pictures of him and told everybody to celebrate with us. So going into the trip, we had 1 tent, and for the first part, and it's a 6-person tent, except tents aren't really judged by human-sized people. They're like Drew, so it's like a 6 Drew tent, which means that the 5 of us people could not fit in it, like at all. So Enrique was like, "I'll sleep outside," and I was like, "Oh, thank God." And because you all get smelly, but like Enrique gets super smelly. He, as they've said, so he slept outside, and this isn't a park where you have to put your stuff up in a tree, so bears, or not in a tree, but away, so bears don't eat it. And Enrique is the matador is sleeping outside, which is great. Unfortunately, they don't make tents soundproof these days, so like you still hear Enrique. And there were times when we had to open the windows so then we would smell Enrique. So it's like he was still there even though he was considerably far away from the tent. So we were going, and by going I mean we were going and Enrique wasn't. The first day we realized how in shape everybody was, and Enrique was not. And he had a pack with, by the way, 5 or 6 pounds of trail mix. Everybody had like beef jerky and candy and granola bars and stuff that was helpful, and he packed so much trail mix. We had his backpack on, and all of us walked like this, we were like, oh, this is a little tiring. And Enrique walked like my grandmother, which was like this. And it was the forward motion of the back pushing on his front body that led him in the direction that he was pointing. And I normally like to hike fast. I'm like, oh, I'll hike fast because then I get to take a longer break. There's a stupid thing about hiking is that like the better hiker who's hiking fastest gets to wait the longest once everybody shows up to have a break. But it was great with Enrique because you got to wait for like an hour and a half to a point where our first day we were going to go like 11 or 13 miles. We ended up going like 4.5 because of slow Enrique who we waited for. On the second day we learned from that and we're like, all right, listen, we're going to be up ahead at the campsite, just follow the path. But the path is like, there's rocks on it and stuff, and you can't really tell where the path is at times. So I was like, oh, I'll use my stick and draw little arrows in the ground for Enrique so he knows where to go. So me and everybody, we got to the camp, and we drew straws, and me and Ryan had to go back and get Enrique. We're like, well, we should probably go make sure he's not lying down on the ground somewhere waiting for us. So we took, I can't remember how long it took to hike it there, probably 5 or 6 hours. We hiked back for an hour and a half and then meet up with Enrique. That's how slow he was going. Then we carried his bag for him, so he made it to the campsite. It was it was glorious. It was wonderful. He did such a great job. That night, Nate started dying, and he was like, I was like, oh, Nate, want to go up there with me? He's like, I don't know, I don't feel well. I was like, oh, come on. He's like, no, I don't know. So then he barfed like 3 hours later, just kind of out. And then later that night, he barfed in the campfire. You're like, well, okay, I guess we're not setting that tomorrow morning. So we're concerned because, he might be dying. Like, and we're a 11 miles now, thankfully, on day 2, like away from everywhere. Our phones don't work. Ryan White's phone kind of works, so we're looking it up, and like his appendix might be blowing up. He might. There was a whole bunch of weird WebMD. Like, don't go to WebMD. Just wait. You'll be fine. But anyway, Nate was getting worse and worse. So we went to sleep, and I was sitting beside Nate, and I woke up in the night, and it was like Nate thought I was his girlfriend, because he had his head on my shoulder like that. It was really close. And I was like, oh gosh, because I didn't know if what he had was contagious at that point. So I'm like, he wasn't like kissing me or anything like that, but it was just like, oh gosh. But I didn't want to wake him because this might be his last sleep ever. So I don't want to be like, hey, like he gets to heaven, he's like, I just wanted one more sleep, So I was like, oh, it's fine. So I was like, whatever. But what's frustrating, why I woke up was Ryan Kuhn. Is Ryan Kuhn here? Good. He's really, really nice, and he's so good at singing, but he snores all the night long. He's all night, and you're like, oh, and I get frustrated. I often like to tell people when I'm frustrated because it makes me feel better. And then they know and they don't care, and then I'm just like, okay, well, now you know. So Ryan was like, well, I can't do anything about snoring, and I'm like, you can do a lot of things. They got mouth guards and pillows and like the swimming things you put on your nose. And he's like, well, I don't have that. And I'm like, we're in a tent. Why didn't you bring it? So he would wake us up a lot. That's important later on. And important if anyone's thinking of living in the same bed as Ryan Kuhn. So Nate's getting worse, and like one of your best friends is maybe dying in the middle of nowhere. You're like, well, we should probably do something about this. So we decided to wait 2 more hours, and he was still feeling like, what is 2 hours going to do? And then he was still feeling bad. So we're like, okay, we should hike out. So everyone starts going, and Enrique's last, because we just got used to that. I went back to Enrique and said, Enrique, Nate might be dying. You have to walk as fast as you can. And he was like, yeah, I can do that. And I was like, sure. So we just kept going. We would wait for each other. We wouldn't wait for Enrique. We'd wait, and then all the time we're strategizing, like, which way should Nate go to get out? Who should go with him? Who should go back for Enrique to carry his pack? We also took a whole bunch of stuff away from Nate and gave it to everyone else except Enrique, because we didn't want him to the forward momentum to like push him into the ground. So like it's too much, and you just start like digging into the ground. So we didn't have to go and get him. So we go and we get to this one point, and there was this doctor. This guy hiking. He's like, oh, I'm a doctor. We're like, excellent. This is fantastic. So he takes a look at Nate, and before he takes a look at Nate, he's like, well, actually, I'm ophthalmologist. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, an eye doctor. And I'm like, ugh. So he like does the appendix test. He's like, well, it could be appendicitis. We're like, great. And then he's like, but my wife's a doctor, don't worry. And we're like, great. And she was, just a couple minutes behind. So she shows up. It turns out she's like a contagious disease specialist. We're like, oh. And he's like, they're like, well, he might have something that's really contagious that you're all going to get, or you might be fine. I'm like, what? So, at this point, I wish I was as slow as Enrique, so I was the least affected, Like, I don't know if stuff can go into your ear and infect you, but like, that's where Nate was breathing all night long. So they come and then they leave, and they're like, good luck. And we're like, thanks. So finally, we end up sending Ryan Kuhn back, just in case he starts snoring, to go get Enrique. And Enrique was like 15 minutes away. It was so amazing. I don't even know, like, there must have been like a taxi that picked you up and like something. Like, it was the difference between like, we should have waited hours, and he was right there, and it was great. So we got Nate out. We went to friggin' Fresno. Which is the worst. Went there, and we were gonna put him in a hospital. We stopped at a clinic near Yosemite first. They were like, well, just see how it goes. So Ryan had some hotel points. We stayed at a hotel in Fresno, which surprisingly had electricity. And it was a really nice hotel room. It had 2 bedrooms and a couch. And I got stuck with sleeping with Nate in one of the bedrooms. I was like, oh, I'm already infected from last night. So I was like, well, we might as well kiss then. But no. And Ryan slept on the couch, which meant that Enrique and Ryan Kuhn, the snorer, they slept in the other bedroom. And I was like, oh, it's not too bad being with Nate, except, when I wake up and see my first dead body. And the morning, Ryan Kuhn comes out and he's like, I didn't sleep at all because Enrique snored all night. And I was like, that's what it's like! That's what I felt like in the tent the whole time! At least you had a bed and not friggin' rocky ground with Mount Snore going on. So, that was the time that Enrique did something right. Thank you very much.
Jamie Scheel! I'm drawing everything. That's actually a very true story. I ended up having kidney stones on that trip. Kidney stones are supposed to last about 3 to 4 weeks. Mine lasted 6 weeks. And I was completely bedridden for 6 weeks. This was my top speed. It was the most strange. I didn't know a human could move this slow, but I still trailblazed the shit faster than Enrique out of that canyon. I was literally writing goodbye notes to people I know in my cell phone because I was assuming I was going to die before I found civilization. And Enrique was still an hour behind.